Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation. This podcast is all about supplements to feel better now and age better in the future. My guest today reckons she'll live to 120. No problem. And this is an epic podcast. Dr. Sandy Kaufmann is the author of the new book, The Kaufmann Protocol, Why We Age and How to Stop It. And she details the biological mechanisms of aging. And then in this podcast, she outlines in precise detail some of the, what she calls agents you might want to be taking to help with that. I mean, I've already taken action after having spoken to Sandy, and I think you will as well. I first got interested in this area speaking to Dr. David Sinclair and reading his book on longevity. This is on a similar track. You will love it, as I did as well. Here she is, Dr. Sandra Kaufmann. She asked me to call her Sandy, so we'll call her Sandy. Dr. Sandy Kaufmann on Zestology. Sandy, it's great to have you on Zestology. Thanks for coming on.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Yeah, been really looking forward to talking to you. Longevity is a bit of an interest of mine, actually. So how did you get into all this and what's your background in it?
Well, to back up, number one, I think everyone should be interested in longevity because we're all living, and the better we live, the better we will all be. So I think that being interested in it is not sort of an anomaly these days. But I specifically started being interested because as one gets older, one sort of starts seeing that your body's falling apart, which is clearly no fun. I am an avid rock climber and mountain climber, and I started at the age of 45 noticing that maybe I wasn't as strong and powerful as I used to be. And I thought, well, this is crazy. I should fix this. And I was a cell biologist before I went to med school. So I spent a ton of time staring at how cells function, what they do, how they can change, et cetera, et cetera. So it dawned on me about, 8 years ago, that we are just made of cells. And if you can fix your cells, you can fix your body. So that has been sort of the impetus to create a system whereby anyone can sort of better their cells and their bodies and thus their lives.
Right. Yeah, because I've had Dave Asprey on this podcast a few times, and he fairly publicly claims he wants to live to 180. What about you?
Oh, I'm shooting for 120.
Wow. Is that well, obviously we know you're more than 45 now. Is that possible? Is that probable, do you think?
I really actually do, because I don't really care if people know how old I am. I'm 52 now. I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. I'm a 5'10", 5'11" climber. I hope to be that same thing when I'm 80 or 90. I don't know, since I didn't start this project until I was in my mid-40s, I don't know how long I can make my own existence. Had I known what I know now years and years ago, I think that maybe I could have hit 150. I think that 180 at the moment sounds like a pipe dream, and that may be true for maybe our children, but certainly not for those of us sort of at the highlight of our life right now.
Yeah. But don't you think there's also something about the kind of the way that we live our lives when we're young that, I mean, there's plenty, if I'd known when I was 20, I would be in better shape now, but I probably still wouldn't have put it into practice because all I wanted to do was get drunk and party at that age.
Oh, no, that's completely entirely true. And I'm saying don't get drunk and, just keep partying, but be smart about it, right? Take your antioxidants. Don't lie in the sun with baby oil on. There's all of these things that we did unknowingly that we could have done maybe a little bit better.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I'm very inspired to get into it. It's funny, actually, because Dave Asprey, just on Dave Asprey again, he went on one of the top rated TV shows in this country recently. And he was talking about intermittent fasting, which people couldn't get their head around. So I'm a massive fan of intermittent fasting. And then when he said he wanted to live to 180, he really lost the room. So I think, a lot of this stuff is fairly out there. But for Zestology listeners, Sandy, you'll be pleased to hear that we are all very excited to hear about some of your suggestions. So what is the kind of thing that you look at? And perhaps you could go into a little bit more on what qualifies you to tell people to look at some of these areas.
Sure. So the answer is, number one, I'm a physician. Number two, I'm a cell biologist. And number three, I'm just like everyone else. I don't want to get older. So I took my skill set, which is pretty much reading incredibly boring stuff. A few years ago, my office looked like a Post-it company had exploded. I went through probably, thousands and thousands of research papers. And this is really boring bench research stuff. Made notes absolutely everywhere and just kept organizing them into piles until it dawned on me that there are 7 essential reasons that your cells age. Right?
Right.
And a lot of people focus on 1 or 2. And I found that at the time, there were some longevity experts, they were really just obsessed about their own silos, right? They're telomere people, there are epigenetic people, there are stem cell people, but no one sort of, I think, seemed to understand that you need to look at all of these silos as a whole, because otherwise you're not going to sort of decelerate the aging process. So what I did is I clustered these things into 7 very understandable categories. And then I looked at various oral agents, things that people could take reasonably easily. I looked at risk-benefit ratios. If the risk was too high, I nuked it. If, the cost was ridiculously exorbitant, I kind of nuked it. So to take really reasonable adjuvants, and then I rated them in each of the 7 tenets so that you know exactly what they're doing for you. For example, agent X might be amazing for your DNA, not so great for your glycation, or vice versa. So by giving people information about what agents do specifically, it allows people to create a longevity program that's sort of personalized for them, right? And because your needs change as you age, and your needs change if you have family histories of specific diseases or if you have different tendencies.
So by agents, you talk about supplements.
Yeah, well, I don't actually like to call them supplements because it's kind of a nasty word, I think, sort of by the FDA sort of created this category of supplements, which is just a bag of crap. So I actually call them molecular agents because they work on a molecular basis. And by definition, a supplement is anything that you already have that you're adding more to. An adjuvant is something that your body's never seen naturally. And then, of course, there's actual pharmacy prescription type medications that are extremely useful. So rather than identifying one versus the other, I just call them all molecular agents.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm very much looking forward to compiling a list of molecular agents with you. To work out what we need to do. And I think the other thing about longevity is, I've always been interested in this. And sometimes my friends will say, well, what's the point? Why do you actually want to live to 120 or 150 or whatever? And for me, it's not necessarily so much about wanting to live longer, but it's wanting the life I have to be kind of healthy and vibrant and full of vitality, even when you get to 70, 80, 90. And I suppose that's all part of it, isn't it?
Oh, no, that's exactly it. You nailed it. We talk about lifespan and then we talk about health span, right? Honestly, who cares if you're 150 and you're in a nursing home and you don't even know that you're there? That is not a life worth living, in my opinion, at least for me. But if your health span is intact, basically you can be as active and as vibrant. There's a weird clash of words, but you can be as active, have as much vitality as you want and do all the activities that you want as long as you want. And that's what's crucial here, right? Yeah. If you can decrease relative risk of age-related diseases, then you win, right? If you can put off getting diabetes until you're 110 versus when you're 70, that's a bonus. If you don't get cancer instead of getting cancer, that's huge. Right? If you don't develop Alzheimer's, all of these things are moderately avoidable. I mean, not entirely, right? But for the most part, you can decrease relative risk. And you're going to hear me say that a million times because I don't want to promise anything to anyone, in reality. But you can make your life significantly better for a significantly longer period of time. And I know a lot of people, they hit retirement in their 60s and then they die. And what is the point of that, right? You want to put away enough cash, but then still have the enthusiasm to go travel the world and see the sights or do whatever it is that makes someone's life worth living.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, Sandy, I am fully signed up, raring to go with some of your suggestions. And as we go, I will tell you, I'm not a longevity expert, but I have my theories on what is best for me to live a healthy life now and long into the future. And this is based on some very unscientific collection of metrics, things like checking my heart rate variability and my heart rate, and some very subjective metrics as well, which I collect, things like how much energy have I got on a particular day and stuff like that. I've noticed certain trends. So as we go, I might run a couple of those past you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Good. So what are the kind of things we should look at? You mentioned epigenetics and stem cells, and you said there were 7 different areas. Where should we start and what can we change?
Well, it'll probably make a lot more sense if quickly I tell you what the 7 tenets of aging are per me. And this is going to kind of be boring, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit entertaining because this is where people get a little bit glassed over because it's sciencey stuff, but I think it's kind of crucial.
Yeah, no, I believe in your ability to make this exciting, Sandy. So far, it's good. So let's see how we go.
Fantastic. All right. So tenet 1 has to do with DNA alterations. So big categories in DNA alterations are telomere length. And we all know that your telomeres get shorter over time. And there are things we can do to sort of prevent that. And then the second big thing in the DNA category is epigenetic modification. Your epigenetics, part of it is pre-programmed and part of it just has to do with your environment. And it's one of the big reasons that identical twins aren't so identical as they get older. Right? One identical twin gets a little fatter, the other one starts losing his hair. And that simply has to do with your environment. Like, are you around toxins? Do you smoke? Do you exercise? Are you fat? Do you eat Twinkies? There are all of these things that are negative versus positive epigenetic modifiers.
Yeah.
And people always ask me, well, that's kind of utterly ridiculous. How would a food change, what you are? And I always use the honeybee example because I think this is just unbelievable. But if you take a bunch of bee larvae, when they're little, they are all fed exactly the same thing, right? As they get older, the diet changes for the one that's predestined to be the queen. And it is only the queen's diet that affects her epigenetics. And because that affects it, she's 3 times as large and her entire life is longer and different than all the little worker bees. So one food choice changes the entire existence of a bee.
Yeah, that's a nice reminder, isn't it? Because I must say it is sometimes, when you're eating something kind of, with full of trans fats or some kind of dodgy cookie from your local newsagent or something, in the short term, you might not feel it, although you might, but it might be a long-term thing. I've actually just written a book on energy and it's, I had to explain to my editor who kept saying, well, how's it going to make them feel more energized? And I had to say, well, there's 2 different types of energy. There's the energy that you feel right now, and then there's the better health that you feel down the line when you've got better longevity and health and everything else. No, absolutely. Couldn't concur more. Yeah. Good. Okay. So we've got environment.
Yeah. Anyway, but there's a variety of epigenetic modifiers that are phenomenally good for you. And that's the thing that you can start doing at any age. Right. So that is kind of crucial. Let's see. That's tenet 1. Tenet 2, and then this may be your favorite topic is energy. Right.
Good. Yes, definitely.
It's mitochondria. Mitochondria must function because if your cells don't get energy, then you're sort of screwed, right?
Yeah.
So the rate limiting issues in mitochondria are 2 things. Number 1, it's nicotinamide deficiency.
Okay.
NAD is part of the electron transport chain. And if you don't have it, you don't make energy. And the problem is that as you get older, you need nicotinamide all over your cells. You need it for 4 very important cellular processes. And the more you need it, the less you have as you get older. So mitochondria tend to fail because of a nicotinamide deficiency. Researchers figured this out probably 7 to 10 years ago. And of course, there's the nicotinamide war that's going on, right? There's nicotinamide riboside versus nicotinamide mononucleotide. There's IV NAD, there's patches, there's nasal spray. Everyone knows that you need to take more of it in. It's just a matter of who's going to pay for what.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you say everyone knows, but I feel like I don't know that much about it, and I feel like I'm well involved in this world, so I want to know more.
All right, well, I can tell you, and I just find this amazingly cool. The body is so cool with molecules. It just goes, what am I going to use this for? And then it makes something up over the course of billions of years of evolution.
Yeah.
So the nicotinamide molecule, it's a cofactor for sirtuins. And sirtuins are pathways that make your body not age or age if they're turned on or off. So without nicotinamide, you can take as many sirtuin activators as you want and nothing will happen. So that's kind of cool. Nicotinamide, the molecule itself, is also taken apart into pieces, and pieces of those are glued into your DNA for DNA repair mechanisms. Right? So if you have 10 to the 5th DNA errors per cell per day, which is, I would say, a lot. And if you don't repair them, you're going to get cancer or you're going to get cell death and apoptosis and senescence and blah, 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 blah. But you need NAD to fix your DNA. And then the last thing is it's a communication device between your mitochondria and your nucleus. So it sort of tells your cell's brain like how much energy you have. So on top of them being in the electron transport chain, that is 4 huge reasons to need NAD. And the needs go up as you get older. So statistically speaking, after the age of 40, you are nicotinamide deficient. And everyone wants to know if they can actually measure it. And the answer is, I'm sure there are companies working on it. Actually, I know that there are companies working on it right now, but there's no easy way to do it at the moment.
Right, yeah. I mean, I remember Dr. David Sinclair telling me a little bit about this when we chatted, and obviously the importance of sirtuins, which he talked about a lot. Are we going to go through the 7 methods first and then start addressing them, or are you going to tell me now how I can order some NAD and start taking it tomorrow?
We can do whichever. Some things are very specific to a category, and other things sort of span categories. Yeah,
well, let's deal with that now then, because I mean, NAD sounds like something that it's a really good idea to get on with, especially as I am over 40, and I would love to start repairing any DNA cell damage that's happened today, as I've stared at my computer all day and not been outside very much.
Oh yeah, and it'll absolutely help your energy levels. There is no doubt. So the question is, so after the age of 40, everyone should be on it, with the exception of people that actively have cancer, because the problem is you make normal cells behave better. You can also make cancer cells behave better, which is what we do not want, right?
Well, that's the same with colostrum as well, isn't it, I think?
It's pretty much true of any agent that makes your cells optimized, because cancer cells are wackadoodle, and a lot of the patterns that we expect for normal cells, they just don't follow. So truly, that's one of those things that I don't want to cause anyone to have increased cancer issues. But if you are pretty sure that you don't have cancer, it's one of those mandatory things that people should be on.
Okay. Well, do we just go on Amazon and find the NAD that looks good?
You can. And truly, the only 2 options orally are nicotinamide riboside, comes from a company called Chromadex, and they're amazing. And then the competitor is something called nicotinamide mononucleotide. They are slightly different in terms of numbers, enzymatic steps to make NAD. NR tends to be the gold standard in the industry. But again, it's all trademarked and patented. So these things, it's a matter of what you can get for what price and what you're willing to pay for the most part.
Right.
If you're money bags, you can go, at least in the United States, for almost $2,000 and go get a nicotinamide infusion, which I always think is a little bit silly, but people will pay for anything around here.
I've been offered an NAD IV in London, I think.
Yeah.
My friends at London Cryo are offering it, and they wanted me to test it out and record a podcast. Apparently you feel quite bad after you do that. You can feel quite nauseous. Is that right?
You know what? I don't actually know, because I don't actually know anyone that's done it. Yeah. Because as a physician, I can tell you that no one has urgently come to the emergency room with an NAD dying deficiency.
Right.
Yeah. So, if you're willing to wait 10 days, you can make up your deficiency without needing, a ridiculously expensive infusion. And I think the infusions are just a way to get around the patents of the oral stuff. Plus, people think it's kind of cool, but it's really kind of not necessary.
Are there any side effects to it? Because I certainly find that some supplements, I do get a kind of Herxheimer reaction. I think probably I'm Mr. Sensitive, but sometimes I just feel like a methylation, for example, if I go in too big too soon, I can get a proper detox reaction going.
I have recommended this to thousands of people And no one has ever come back to me and said they had an issue. So it's certainly possible, but it's moderately unlikely.
Okay, moderately unlikely. Okay, excellent. Well, this is really exciting. I mean, I can't wait to get started on that. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which brand to tell you. I don't represent any brand. I think they're all pretty darn good.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'll find one. I've made notes. That's good enough for me.
The older you are and the more deficient you are, the longer it's going to take to sort of feel an energy level. And people say they don't feel high. They just feel sort of like back to doing their normal activities of life. Because it's a lot of middle-aged people that have just slowed down a lot. Mm. And it sort of, I don't know, perks them back up to normal.
Oh, sounds great. Well, what else have you got for us then?
Okay, so we're still in tenet 2 of mitochondria. And the other thing that we worry about in mitochondria, of course, is free radical damage, right? 1 to 10% of oxygen, of course, we need it for the electron transport chain, gets radicalized. Our body is smart, so of course we have endogenous free radical scavengers. But of course, over the course of time, they don't do as much as they should, right? We don't make as much SODs or glutathiones or all of the things that we kind of need. So as one gets older, one sort of has to either augment the actual free radical scavenger, or it has to intake something that precipitates your own production, right?
Yeah.
And there are many, many, many things that do this. Astaxanthin is one of my absolute favorites because it does both. It's one of the most potent free radical scavengers all by itself, and it causes your body to make its own endogenous free radical scavengers. So it's like a twofer.
Right. So this is still in tenet 2.
We're still in tenet 2.
Okay. And astaxanthin helps with the eyes as well, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, so that's a very interesting question, right? So why? And the answer is really easy. Your eyes allow a ton of UV light in, right? That's the job of the eye. Light and glucose, which is in the back of your retina, produces a ton of free radicals.
Right.
Rods and cones have a ton of mitochondria. It is just a stew of free radicals. And so by taking astaxanthin, your vision's going to get better.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think I need that because I think it's since I hit 40, my eyes have just gone downhill.
Oh, I can help you with that. Is it general vision or focusing?
It's general vision, and my eyes just are not as good. I can't read as well. And I mean, my wife sits in bed and can read with what seems to me like no light at all. And I need it kind of really bright and quite big now.
So that's actually two problems.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the size is presbyopia.
Okay.
That is the inability of your lens to focus. And that has to do mostly with glycation of your lens. That falls into category 7, but we can skip to that if you want. The problem with general vision is rods and cones, and that's free radicals. And there are these great eye drops called SKQ1 Visomitten, and they come from Russia. And it's designed specifically for mitochondria in your retina, and it really makes your vision better.
Right. Are they kind of natural or pharmaceutical or what?
Oh, they're totally fake. Russians love carnosine, and they love eyes. They're just amazing scientists.
Okay.
So it's an SKQ1. It is a totally fabricated molecule, but it's truly astounding. I import SKQ1 by the gallon. It's in my refrigerator, and it really helps with vision.
My goodness. I mean, is it safe pouring this into your eyes?
I've been doing it for, 8 years. It seems to be fine.
Great. SKQ1, I've made a note of that then.
SKQ1 Visomitten.
Yeah.
The other drop, which is amazing, which helps with presbyopia, is carnosine. There's N-acetylcarnosine, which is just a dipeptide. And we have the dipeptide in our bodies. And what that does is it sort of blocks the glycation of your lens, and you can actually start reducing presbyopia to a certain degree. And it also helps block cataract formation. And they put this stuff in like millions of Russian volunteers years ago, and their vision got better.
Wow. So that's natural.
Oh, it's amazing.
Okay.
Well, it's not real. I mean, it's sort of natural. There are all these hybrids, right?
Yeah.
Carnosine is a naturally occurring dipeptide.
Right.
You stick a few extra chemicals on it to give it permeability, and then is it natural? Is it not? Well, maybe, maybe not. But I live in the world of I don't really care. I live in the world of efficacy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's as far as possible. I do like to follow natural solutions, but I also used to pride myself on my eyes. They were so good, Sandy, and now they're just not as good. So maybe we're going to have to be looking those up.
Well, on your binge-worthy, can't even speak. Everything must be natural. Just as I tell lots of people, cyanide and botulism are natural, and they're not so great for you.
Yeah.
So all that's natural is not fantastic.
Okay, fair enough. So remind me where we are. Are we at 10 at 2 or 10 at 7?
So mitochondria is 10 at 2. So let's go to 10 at 3.
Yeah.
And that is, I call it pathways. You have genetic protein cellular pathways that create the ability to age or not age. And of course, the sirtuins fall into this, right? There's 7 mammalian sirtuins, and they control, oh my God, so much of your life. They control circadian rhythms. They determine brown fat versus white fat deposition. They determine how much endogenous free radical stuff you make. They control pretty much everything. And of course, over time, all of your sirtuins get turned off. And we just need to keep them turned on. The most famous sirtuin activator is resveratrol that comes from wine, of course. Its cousin, pterostilbene, comes from blueberries, and they do roughly the same thing. Resveratrol suffers from the fact that it is less bioavailable. But of course, now companies are battling to make bioavailable resveratrol. And pterostilbene suffers away from the fact that there's some study that suggests that it can increase cholesterol if, just minutely, but certainly possible. So some people like one, some people like the other.
Yeah. I remember David Sinclair told me that resveratrol should be taken with fat. Is that right? In the morning?
Most things are absorbed better if you take them with food because it activates the, endogenous enzymes that increase absorption.
And I mean, I suppose this is another one that comes under the category because I'm not taking resveratrol at the moment. I do take quite a lot of supplements, but I think for me, it's one of those ones that it's not one of those ones where you take it and an hour later you think, oh my God, I feel amazing. We're thinking down the line, right?
Yeah, you're going to feel absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I think that frustrates people. But what I like to point out is that you don't feel yourself aging from day to day, right? Most people say, you know what, yesterday felt just like today, and the day before that was fine, and maybe, a few days ago, whatever. But you don't feel aging, so you're not going to feel not aging.
Right, yeah.
And this is not about, different people have different perspectives, and this is not, in my world, about feeling fantastic and having energy. This is like about not aging. And you have to take it with a grain of salt that I'm doing these things for the long haul, and it's going to pay off.
Yeah, great. If you've ever said you're going to go with your gut, it's not just a saying. Your gut really is connected to your brain and signals pass back and forth between them. Interrupting this podcast for one moment to tell you about my podcast partner today. And it's an important one because 74% of us are suffering from digestive problems. And it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process to start making them better. You can change your gut microbiome and start to feel better in as little as 72 hours. Here's how to do it. My friends at BiOptimizers have developed an exciting new formula that combines cutting-edge nutrition that you would normally find in 2 separate products. It is powerful probiotics and prebiotics and nootropic and adaptogenic brain herbs. They're the ones that boost your mood, manage stress, help you improve your memory, and it's all in one formula called COGNIBIOTICS. I love this. It's the perfect solution for supporting your gut health, brain health, mental health at the same time. It is bang on target for Zestology, where we're looking to boost our mood, feel more energized, and feel a little bit more revitalized as well. The best bit is perhaps that COGNIBIOTICS comes with a full 1-year guarantee, so you can try it, and if you don't like it, just send it back, get a refund. Simple as that. You can go to cognibiotics.com/zestology. That is cognibiotics.com/zestology. You'll see a picture of me on there, and you can use the code zestology10 to receive 10% off. So that's cognibiotics.com/zestology. If you're in the UK, just head to bioptimizers.co.uk and use the same discount code zestology10. That is going to get you 10% off all the BiOptimizers products. And you know, I'm really focused at the moment on energy and re-energizing on this podcast, and I think this is just bang on target. It's a blend of gut health, a bit of biohacking, and boosting your mood as well. cognibiotics.com/zestology. Use the code zestology10 for powerful probiotics, prebiotics, nootropics, and adaptogenic brain herbs. Back to the show. And I wanted to just interrupt for a moment before we go to any more of the tenets, because I know that you have an app, and that people can kind of follow a regimen on the app, on a program on the app. And I know a lot of people listening to this will be thinking, yeah, great, because all this sounds so good. Tell me a little bit about that and how it works, because that probably be quite helpful for people.
Wait. So the app is pretty simplistic. Number one, I am not a huge computer person, because I don't know, I'm just not. But nor do I have an aging office. I mean, I see a few clients here and there, but I'm an anesthesiologist. In fact, I'm the chief of a pediatric hospital of anesthesiology, so I'm really pretty darn busy. And unfortunately, everyone and his brother wants me to tell them exactly what to take all the time, and I just couldn't do that. So I created this app, and again, it's not fancy, but you go in and you take a quiz, and basically it's to set thresholds of, or at least baselines of what aches, what doesn't, why do you feel like you're aging, blah, blah, blah. And you sort of enter your personal information as to your weight, your height, your, vital signs, et cetera, what you want to accomplish and what's important to you. And it's sort of based on an algorithm that I created, spits out a program for people. And the idea is that this is built for people that are not really on a whole lot of anything and they don't know where to start.
Yeah. For
people that are already on 30 things, this is going to seem extremely remedial to them.
Okay.
It's just designed to get people going in the right direction.
Great. It's interesting because all this is a real hobby for you, isn't it?
Oh, this is just a ridiculously elaborate hobby. Yes, I don't make anything doing this. This is simply for fun.
So you just come on podcasts. You love talking about it. This is your passion. You get to connect with interesting people, and I'm putting myself in the interesting person category, and that's why you do it.
That's exactly why I do it. Yeah.
Great. Oh, that's so cool. And the best practitioners and the best people are the people who really, really love it. So great. Okay. Well, does that wrap up the one around sirtuins then?
So that's sirtuins, but in the same pathway category, we talk about AMP kinase, and this is sort of a key one, because AMP kinase, I don't know if people remember 5th grade biology, but your glucose or your energy is leveled in something we call ATP. I'm sure you're well versed in that, right? So adenosine triphosphate, basically it's the adenosine molecule with a bunch of phosphates added to it. And when you whack off the phosphates, you get energy. And when you have no energy, you have more AMP, which is monophosphate. So the enzyme AMP kinase gets activated when you are perceived as not having any energy, right? And it puts your body in a state of hibernation, and it preserves cell function until you have energy. And this is the cornerstone of caloric restriction, right? All of these crazy don't eat for a zillion hours, you're activating your AMP kinase. And this is, there are other benefits, of course. You do have fewer calories in it, and there are a few other things. But the heart of these starvation diets is AMP kinase. And I know people love to talk about how long they've fasted, and I'm just like amazed because I couldn't do it if my life depended on it. I kind of like to eat, and starving has never been in my wheelhouse of things that I can get away with. The good news, and because I know there are other people out there just like me, is there are a bunch of agents that are caloric restriction mimetics, and they tell your body that you're starving even if you're not. So you get sort of the same bang for your buck.
Right. Well, like what then? Well,
the best, most famous one is metformin.
Okay.
And I think everyone over 40 should be on metformin.
You do, really? What, rather than, so intermittent fasting will not do the same job?
They have overlapping properties.
Yeah.
So, for example, metformin activates your AMP kinase. It reduces your glucose. It does a variety of things. It also helps your sirtuins. In addition, it changes the balance of your microbiota in your gut.
Right.
So there are skinny people bacteria and there's more fat people bacteria. And by being on metformin, it alters it to skinny people bacteria. So you're better off in the long run.
Yeah. That is another one that I've made notes in the past to take a look at, but I've never taken. So I've made the note again. Now let's move on then. What about tenet 4?
So tenet 4, I call quality control. And I have this whole factory model analogy thing. So I figure someone has to check your widgets. And in this category, it's basically repair mechanisms and autophagy. So as I sort of mentioned earlier, you have a lot of DNA damage. And so there are 4 specific DNA repair mechanisms, and there are 4 specific protein repair mechanisms. These, of course, all fail with age. And when they do, in terms of DNA, you're likely to get all sorts of horrible cellular outcomes. As I said before, cancer, more senescent cells, more autophagy, just generally organ failure. And then in terms of protein production failure, you're wasting a ton of energy and resources making something that doesn't work. And then these proteins can glob up systems. So we know, like in Alzheimer's, you get anomalous protein formation. You can get anomalous protein formation that backs up your kidneys. But we have these fantastic mechanisms to fix things. They just fail. And there are agents that can actually improve your DNA repair rates.
Right. Like what?
So my favorite is something called polypodium. And people sell it as something called fern block because you can take it orally and it repairs your skin damage after you've been in the sun. The good news is it repairs DNA all over your body. They just don't notice it. There's also an agent from the Amazon. It's called AC11, and that increases DNA repair mechanisms.
Okay. So is that the best one to look for then?
Polypodium is the easiest to find. AC11 is a little bit more tricky and probably a little bit more expensive.
Right.
And the good news is polypodium comes as an oral supplement or agent, and it also comes as a topical. So I tend to smear it on my face if I mess up and get a little bit too much sun.
Okay, well that's really handy because as much as we all know the kind of the good things to do in sun, you don't always remember to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's look at the other 3 tenets then.
All right. Well, we skipped. So let me just mention briefly while we're still in quality control is something called autophagy, and this is cellular recycling, right? And it's crucial, and that there's pros and cons, but bigger pros than cons. Basically, when you look at a cell, pieces of organs break, and the cell takes the pieces apart and reassembles them to make new pieces. So it's kind of incredibly cool. The downside is that in very long-lived cells, some of the pieces are non-recyclable, and they get squished in the back of your cell and accumulates to something called a lipofuscin. And that affects brain cells and other things that sort of don't turn over. But in normal cells, autophagy is extraordinarily important, and the thing that we have that affects that the best and the most is something called spermidine.
Yes, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Right. Carries a fantastic name because they found it von Liebig, who obsessed about looking under everything under a microscope years and years and years ago. Apparently was staring at his own sperm and he found spermidine.
Yeah, it is a slightly off-putting name, but I believe it's very important.
Oh, it's extremely important. And it does really just amazing things because on top of increasing autophagy, it does this crazy thing with DNA. It's a linear molecule and it fits into the grooves of your DNA molecules and it protects them from damage. And I like to envision this as sort of like a bubble wrapping of your DNA.
Right.
Like it doesn't do anything to it. It's not an epigenetic modifier. It simply protects it until you need to unravel it to use it for something else.
But you can't go and buy what is it? Spermidine.
Spermidine. Oh, of course you can.
Oh, you can? Oh, okay.
Of course. In fact, there's a great company, Primidine, I think is what it's called, in the UK.
Okay.
From Oxford.
So it's like it's protecting your cells. Is that the fair way of? Yeah.
It's protecting your DNA.
Right.
And it increases autophagy. And it has a variety of other really cool properties, extremely beneficial. And again, pros and cons, it has no cons.
Oh, great. Okay. Right now, I'm conscious of time, so I wanted to move on. I know you talk about inflammation in Tenet 5. Is that right?
Right. Absolutely right. Your body becomes chronically inflamed over time. This causes, obviously, huge problems everywhere. We call it inflammation because you age over time. And so my favorite thing for inflammation is curcumin.
Right. Yeah.
People say, oh, yeah, I eat a lot of turmeric. I should be fine. And the problem with that logic is that only 1 to 5% of turmeric is actually curcumin. And the half-life of curcumin is about an hour, maybe. So there's been the battle of the curcumin production. And people over the last 8 to 10 years have been trying to figure out how to make it more bioavailable. And there are a couple winners right now. My favorite is something called 277 metacurcumin by a company called Epigenetics. As soon as I say that, someone else will come out with something that's even better. But as long as it's bioavailable, then it's going to work for you.
Is Meriva good?
I don't think that's as good.
I've always found with curcumin, I've taken Meriva a few times. This is another one in the category of I don't really feel anything when I take it.
Yeah, if you don't feel it, it's not working for you. Because I can tell you, when I ran out a few days ago and my body just started aching. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Wow. Yeah.
I started taking it, and then I would give it to people that came into my office in the hospital like, oh my God, my foot's killing me today. I have some of this. The entire OR is now on metacurcumin. I just keep it. It's like a candy jar in my office.
Yeah. I suppose in some ways you're probably seen as a bit of an outlier in conventional medicine, but then you give them some curcumin and they feel better and they think, hang on, we're going to listen to what Dr. Sandy has to say here.
Yeah, and it's funny. I get all these crazy labels like, "Oh my God, you're holistic." I'm like, "No, I'm not holistic. You're vegan." "Oh no, I'm so not vegan." Yeah. I just believe in efficacy. That's it.
Don't worry. I in my day job here, I work at a TV channel here in London, and people say exactly the same thing to me. They're like, "Oh, you're into all that self-help stuff, are you?" Here, have a curcumin tablet.
It sounds crazy until you do it, and then you go, "Wow, this it really works." So why not?
Yeah.
Again, risk-benefit ratio. You're not losing anything.
Okay, that's really good because I had put that under the kind of, okay, well, I don't really feel anything. It's not really working, but I'm going to try that brand that you recommended. I've just made a note of it. 277 metacurcumin. We'll have a look at that one.
Yep, metacurcumin. If you can't get that, just find something that says bioavailable, because in the old days, they would put it with pepper. I mean, they just tried everything and it just didn't work. But now it's in nanomycels and just high-tech sort of stuff, and it really works. Right.
Okay, yeah. Then you've got 2 more tenets. One is on individual cells.
Right. So this is basically, it started because a liver cell is different than a red cell, which is different than a brain cell, which is different than a stem cell, which is different than a senescent cell. So this is a whole sort of like a catch-all sort of category. And I talk about like how to get rid of senescent cells, which is a lot of quercetin and fisetin, how to boost your stem cells. And there's a whole lot of things you could sort of do for that. And then just basic cells, right? Fast turnover cells need a lot of micronutrients. So I tell people to take like prenatal vitamins. Middle-aged cells need a variety of different things. So this is just sort of tailoring to the things that have fallen through the cracks.
Yeah. I just on those prenatal vitamins, when we my partner Faith, we really do swear by them. I think they're so important, and we spent a lot of money on prenatal vitamins before trying for kids, and I think it was money very well spent.
Well, the funny thing is people, especially women, take them trying to, when they're trying to get pregnant, and then they take them and they're like, oh my gosh, my hair is better, my fingernails are better, my skin is better. They have a baby and then they quit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you're doing so well, why stop?
That's a very good point. That's a really good point. The thing is, they're so expensive. I mean, the ones we took, I think they're about, 50, 60 quid a tub, and that was for a month or something like that. But when you feel like that, you're happy to pay that money, aren't you?
You don't have to go super fancy. There's some significantly less expensive ones.
Oh, okay.
And you don't have to take the dose that's on the bottle, right? It's not like we're all having babies here. The idea is just to avoid micronutrient deficiency. So if you take, 1 instead of 3, or take 2 every other day, or just decreasing the dose without being deficient, you're fine.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Yeah. Good. Well, I'll have to find the cheaper ones. And then Tenet 7.
My favorite, you have to take out the trash. So why that's the last one.
Yeah.
So this is glycation for the most part, and then lipofuscin. But glycation, we all know that glucose is bad for you, right? And we don't really understand why it's bad for you, or most people don't. So I'm going to tell you that glycation is because glucose is sticky on the outside and it's sticky on the inside. So the glucose molecule sticks to proteins, and it sticks to DNA, and it sticks to lipids, and it causes what we call the AGEs, advanced glycation end products. And I'm sure you know this, but I don't know if other people do, which is why I'm sort of spelling this out. AGE is my favorite acronym of all time, because if you have AGEs, you are aged. The cool thing in this category is that you can sort of block their development, and you can sort of get rid of them. And there's all sorts of ways to skin a cat. But the problem with AGEs, because I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, is that they're very destructive.
Right.
They, number one, are extremely inflammatory, right? And that does not help because it makes our inflammatory category worse. They're very sticky, so they love to stick to collagen, and they destroy anything that's collagen-based, which is most of us. So our bone gets glycated and gets fragile. Our skin starts to droop. Our hearts the structure is made of collagen, so we get congestive heart failure, even without coronary disease. Anything, again, collagen-based just gets more fragile and falls apart. So one of our huge goals here is to decrease glycation.
Yeah. So how you need to bring out your own supplement. I mean, that's what you need to do with all of this in. So you just have to take one at once. It'd be perfect, wouldn't it?
Well, I have sets of things. Well, I don't sell anything. As we've previously noted, this is an elaborate hobby. Yeah. Companies have come to me, and I'm thinking about it. I am terrified of being the shyster that says, oh, you need to take X, and here I'm selling it to you.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? That's the problem. But the thing is that it would be so helpful if you did have that. Yeah,
I'm seriously thinking about it, and some companies are sort of trying to egg me into doing this. So, we'll see.
Yeah.
In the meantime, it's my people call it a game of hunt, like treasure hunt.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is.
The different agents, because you're right, they don't all come from the same place, which is sort of silly. Yeah. But anyway, so getting back to glycation, because I think it's really important. Yes. Many things decrease glucose absorption, right? Like metformin and berberine and a few others. And then it's a 7 non-enzymatic step to become an AGE. And there are many things that can block that. Quercetin, resveratrol does it. Carnosine can do it. And then you can actually start theoretically stripping some of these AGEs off. There's in a test tube, tubullic acid will do it. We don't know if it actually does it in real cells yet. I'm convinced that carnosine is the answer because it really helps with cataracts, as we mentioned before. So I take oral carnosine and I take the eye drops every day.
Okay, so both.
Oh, yeah.
Carnosine, how's that spelled?
Carnosine, Carnosine.
Okay.
It's a natural occurring dipeptide, as I'd mentioned. Men have more than women, and young people have more than old people, but it prevents glycation. The other cool thing it does is it gets into your muscle and it prevents acidosis with exercise. So as we get older and our muscles burn more and more, you can prevent that. That's just sort of a side bonus.
Okay. So by taking something like carnosine, you are helping the waste management. You're helping clear out the bad stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And is that autophagy as well, which you mentioned earlier on in Tenet 4, I think?
So autophagy is more about cellular recycling.
Yeah.
Like if your mitochondria are failing or if you need a new Golgi body, for example. This is more about clearing out bad molecules.
Right. Wow, this is properly in depth. It's great.
Well, I know it's a little bit much, which is why I created this rating system to try to help people figure it out, because it's not one size fits all, right? So if someone comes to me or they want to develop their own program, number one, it depends on how old you are, right? Someone in their 30s needs epigenetic modification, but they probably don't need NAD or sirtuin activation. If someone has a history of diabetes in their family, glucose management is probably going to be more of an issue.
Yeah.
Right. If they're worried about a family history of Alzheimer's, then we focus more on free radical scavenging and inflammation. So you can sort of, if you know what things do what, you can sort of personalize your own program to maximize your own benefit.
Okay, yeah, I saw the rating system on your site. So what's that? You go through the different tenets and you're asked some questions and then you come up with a score.
So what happens? So my rating system is based on the idea that some of these things do more than one thing, right?
Yeah.
So for an example, astaxanthin, like I mentioned, it's pretty good at increasing your own endogenous antioxidants. It's incredible at being a free radical scavenger, and it's an anti-inflammatory. So what I did is I went through the literature, looked up every possible study where this agent has been tested in this field, right? And if it doesn't do anything at all, like I kill myself to find this information. If it does nothing, it gets a 0. Mm. If there is amazing evidence in humans, then it gets a 3. And then 1 and 2 are in between. So if there's some cellular evidence, that's pretty stable, it gets a 1. And if it's, good in mammals, because we love to kill rodents, right? But if there's good rodent studies that this actually works, then it gets a 2 and then a 3 again in humans. So every agent comes with a 7-digit rating number in each of the 7 tenets. So it's like 0.3.2.1, whatever. And I don't expect anyone to ever remember that because I certainly don't. But the idea is you take the agents that you are on, you'll line up the numbers, and it'll tell you how well you are combating each of the 7 categories.
Right.
So people that take 1,000 antioxidants, you may be doing really well in category 2, but everything you're still going to age because everything else is sort of falling behind. And it falls into what I said at the very beginning. We need to think of aging not in silos, but it's sort of an overall sense of like, let's fix everything that's going on in the cell as much as possible.
And I know you're not affiliated with one company with your own supplements, but is there like a supplement or an agent, as you'd like to call it, which does actually kind of cover a lot of the categories and just makes it a bit easier for people?
God, I honestly, I wish that were true. Companies are trying to do it, and they're trying to squish so many things into one little pill, and then you have to take 7 of them.
Yeah.
Because you just can't get it into one.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I don't mind taking 7 of them, but it's just easier, isn't it?
That's a good question. Would you rather take 7 different ones or 7 of the same one? And I don't know if it really makes all that much difference. I don't know. I think at some point there will be. At the moment, we don't have it. Yeah. And the other thing is that people are different, right? So some people are going to want more things in category 7 or category 3 or category 2. So if the world were perfect, you would go onto my imaginary website and you'd put all of your issues in, and then some computer somewhere would generate you the perfect pill set. Mm. And that might happen soon, maybe, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it's headspace as well, isn't it? I do all my kind of pills in advance because I can't possibly start thinking at lunchtime, getting out loads of pills and putting them all in and working out what is what. There's just too much headspace when I'm trying to work at the same time.
No, and absolutely. The one thing I did do, because it was driving me nuts as well, I couldn't find containers that I liked. So I actually had containers made. They're these round stackable things, and they all screw together. There's 7, and you can fit like 25 pills in each little container. So I load them up once a week, or actually I do it every other week. And then I've got my little stack. And if I travel, I can take my little stack with me, however many days I want. And I decided I didn't want to look like an old person with those old person pill things because they look ridiculous. And I didn't want to look like a drug addict with a little plastic bag like many of my friends. So I carry now what I call the stack. And it's on my Instagram if anyone wants to see what it looks like. And I have a zillion of them, and I'm happy to send them to people.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm not following you on Instagram, so I will. And especially after our chat today, it's absolutely fascinating. I think we've not got much time left. So what is one book that you would recommend and one tip for living with more energy and vitality? Obviously, you've given us a lot already, but one book and one tip.
So I think one of the craziest books that I read once upon a time, and it's a very old book. I know there are a zillion new books out, but I think this really is cool. It's called Carnosine. It's just one name. It's called Carnosine. And it's by a Russian guy, and it starts with a K. And you're going to shoot me because I can't remember. But as soon as you put Carnosine in any search engine, it's going to pop up.
Right.
And what it is a look. It's like 15, 20 years old. And it is a look at the early trials of longevity and the amazing things that they discovered about one molecule with one guy just horribly obsessed with it.
Right. Sounds
And
great.
I stumbled upon this book years and years and years ago, and I keep it in my office, and it's just an astounding bit of knowledge.
Okay.
And like once I read it, I'm like, I just want to take a bath in carnosine. I will live my entire life in a carnosine bubble. It's incredible.
You've definitely mentioned carnosine a few times, so that is right at the top of my list of my to-do list tonight. Once my son goes to bed, settle down with my computer and buy some supplements.
Well, I know it's a little bit tough to get in the UK because my sister lives in Scotland and she's always like, send me stuff. I can't get anything. So I hope your listeners don't have any issues acquiring any of this stuff.
Yeah, a lot seems to be available in the States that's not available over here. And then it's doubly annoying because not only do you have to get it shipped over, you have to pay import taxes as well. So so when you bring out your supplement range, make sure you get a UK distributor as well.
I will do that. I will do that.
Yeah. What about one
everyone else in Miami, you can come and for the next month or two. Everyone else is here. You might as well come on over and buy some.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I mean, honestly, we're not even allowed to leave the house at the moment. At the time of recording, we are still locked down. So, yeah, not good. What about one tip then for living with more energy and vitality?
I think energy and vitality comes from you. Right? I can make your cells as better, as amazingly optimized as possible. But if you're a couch potato, you're just going to stay a couch potato until you get your butt off the couch. As I mentioned before, I rock climb, I mountain climb, I swim every day. I ride my bike when the traffic's not terrible. I run. I get more energy in being active than I think any of the stuff that I do. And I think it just begets itself, right? You hang out with active people, they say, oh my goodness, let's go travel to Argentina. You climb a mountain, you do this, you do that. And it just begets itself. And it's fun and it's enthusiastic. And the more you can do, the more you will do.
Yeah. And I said at the start of the interview, or a little bit earlier on, that I was going to tell you kind of my theories on what works for me in terms of energy now, but I also feel in terms of longevity and general good health long into the future. And I think certainly exercise, I know that it elevates my mood, but it makes me feel physically just better as well. And there's so much research. I mean, Dr. Dale Bredesen, for example, who's been on this podcast, quotes a lot of the research around Alzheimer's that shows the brain changing and improving in people who have kind of, early onset Alzheimer's when they actually do exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. People love exercise studies, and it all just proves what we already know. You get the blood flowing. It helps all of the parts of your body. You feel better. You are better. You're healthier without a doubt. It's just the way that it is.
And the other thing, in terms of my longevity, I do feel that, I'm quite a type A personality, Sandy. And it probably sounds like you are as well, because this might be your hobby, but you obviously put a lot of time and effort and concentration into it. And I feel like when I just relax and do less, and that obviously involves things like exercise and holidays and spending time with the family and those kind of things. I noticed that not only do I feel considerably better, my heart rate variability scores massively improve as well that I measure on the Oura ring. So I think that's probably quite an important component of longevity as well.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, I bought one of those silly Garmin watches that measures all of those sort of physiological variables.
Is it good?
Oh, it's amazing. And I've learned more about my cardiovascular self than I probably ever wanted to know. But what I think is astounding is it told me that I have the cardiovascular status of a 20-year-old. And I thought, I win. I think it's just amazing. So it must be working.
That's great. I've been enviously looking at the Garmin watches because they have this. Is that the stress score that tells you the HRV?
It was a VO2 max that's telling me that I'm 20, and there are a zillion numbers that I haven't really quite figured out yet.
Yeah.
But it just keeps telling me really good things. So I'm thinking, maybe ignorance is bliss, and I'm just going to go with it.
That is a lovely thing to be told by your watch. That's for certain.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Zestology. Honestly, you've really taught me a lot. And I first heard about you on Ben Greenfield's podcast, and I've obviously been looking at your website as well. Where can people find out more about you and everything that you're doing?
So as you found me, it's so funny. People just stumble onto me as if I'm some sort of like bizarre folk secret. I have a website, which is the Kaufmann Protocol.com. My Instagram is Kaufmann Anti-Aging. The book, which sort of encompasses all the things we talked about, and then the top 15 agents, is called The Kaufmann Protocol. And on Facebook, I am Sandra Kaufmann, but I've been really lethargic with following Facebook lately. No
one checks Facebook anymore, do they?
I started very enthusiastically, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm not so good at it anymore. But what I do is, so I try to update the website. I'm probably pretty pathetic at it because I'm just so darn busy. But people ask me a zillion questions all the time, and my email address is, in fact, on the website. And I like to tell people that I answer every question myself. And it takes me a ton of time to do it. But I do it, and I put a lot of thought into the answers. So if people have patience and they want to ask me something, I will absolutely return the email.
Great. I might be one of those people at some point if I have any supplementary questions.
Oh, 100%. Bring it on. I enjoy doing it. It's crazy, but I do it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Zestology. It's been great to talk to you.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
That's it. Thank you for listening. Wow, what a podcast. I mean, right up our street. I know that so many people who listen to Zestology love all this stuff around longevity and supplements. It's kind of fun, isn't it? What a marquee card. There's a bonus episode of Zestology coming out later in the week with a real Zestology favourite. She's been on the show 4 or 5 times. That's coming up later this week, so look out for that. And today's podcast is brought to you by my new book, which has been out 2.5 weeks now. Oh, it's been so much fun. If you haven't taken a look yet, I would be honoured if you did. And if you don't want to, that's all right as well. But it's called When Life is a Bit Meh, You Need Energy. And it is a combination of biohacking and NLP. And I've been so gratified by the feedback that I've had, and the reviews that I've had on Amazon as well have been amazing. If you have read it and you have been reading it and you fancied writing me a review, that is just about the nicest thing you could do for me, because it gets the word out to more people. And if you do that, will you let me know? Because I'd love to thank you personally as well. So When Life is a Bit Meh, You Need Energy. It's very in-depth. Be warned, I go deep. It's on Amazon, all over the place now, Kindle and paperback. And do let me know what you think. That's it for now. See you for the bonus episode later in the week.